I was born with a curiosity to explore the realms of darkness, to seek out the elusive shadows and question their existence, their never-ending convolution with the light. All things were born from this darkness.
Midnight Mary, Evergreen Cemetery, New Haven, Connecticut. At the age of 48 years, Mary Hart mysteriously fell lifeless to the floor. Mistaken for dead, she was buried at the Evergreen Cemetery at midnight on October 15, 1872. Soon after, Mary's aunt awoke to a terrifying nightmare. In the dream, she was visited by Mary. Mary brought her aunt to her graveside and disappeared. As soon as she vanished, screams and cries from within the grave were heard throughout the entire cemetery. Mary's aunt awoke, frantic with the panicked thought of her niece being buried alive. She immediately had the body exhumed, and much to her horror, discovered that Mary had still been alive when she was buried. Mary's fingers were bruised and broken, marred and covered in blood. The inside of the coffin was in disarray, and the pillow top had been torn to shreds. Mary's epitaph reads, quote, "The people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away. At high noon, just from and about to renew her daily work in her full strength of body and mind." Mary E. Hart, having fallen prostrate, remained unconscious until she died at midnight, October 15, 1872. Unquote. To this day, the wails of Midnight Mary can be heard throughout the cemetery. Gardner Lake, Salem, Connecticut. 15 feet beneath the depths of Gardner Lake lies the ruins of the LeCount family home. In the winter of 1895, Thomas LeCount decided to move his family home across the lake to the other side. That February, after an intense winter, LeCount hoisted the house onto skids and, to save time and money, began pulling it across frozen Gardner Lake as opposed to going around it. Around 300 feet across the lake, the house hit a snowbank and became marooned. The house was abandoned overnight, and when they came back to pull it out, the house had begun sinking into the lake. It turns out, overnight, water had been drained from the nearby dam, creating a gap between the ice and water. The LeCount home was swallowed up by the lake. What could be salvaged from the home was, but some of the larger possessions had to be left behind, including the grand piano. For years, the second story and attic were above water, and people would swim out and fish from the house. It became a popular place to ice skate during winter, as people could explore the home. That's when the story of the house being haunted began. It was common to hear stories of people hearing piano music playing from the lake. Gardner Lake became famous for its sunken haunted house and eerie piano music. Although the house has rotted away over the years and is no longer exposed, divers can still see the piano laying deep on the lake bottom, and stories of the eerie piano music is still commonplace. Penfield Reef Lighthouse, Bridgeport, Connecticut. The story of Frederick A. Jordan couldn't be more tragic. Jordan was a lighthouse keeper for the Penfield Reef Lighthouse. The lighthouse was built as a sentry in 1874 to warn of the dangers of the reef to incoming ships. Shortly before Christmas, on December 22, 1916, at 1:30 p.m., Jordan set out in an open rowboat to meet his wife and 3 children for Christmas. 15 minutes after setting out, a raging storm brought a gale of wind that capsized the boat. High atop the lighthouse, the assistant keeper, Rudolph Iten, witnessed the tragic event. After a valiant but failed effort to save him, Jordan disappeared beneath the turbulent sea. Shortly after Jordan's disappearance, Rudolph Iten was made principal keeper, but was haunted by the loss of his colleague. In the 1920s, the Bridgeport Sunday Post published an interview with Iten, who claimed that he had seen Jordan's ghost. Iten stated, quote, "They say that all lighthouse keepers are mad." Some days later, after the accident, on what was one of the worst nights in the history of Penfield, the waves were dashing over the lantern, I was awakened, I was off duty, by a strange feeling that someone was in my room. Sitting up, I distinctly saw a gray, phosphorescent figure emerging from the room formerly occupied by Fred Jordan. It hovered at the top of the stairs and then disappeared in the darkness below. Thinking it was the assistant keeper, I called to know if anything was the matter, but he answered me from the lens room that all was well. Unquote. Iten was startled once again later that night when he discovered that the keeper's logbook had been turned to the page recounting Jordan's disappearance and possible death. The body of Frederick Jordan was found washed up that March near Riverhead, New York. He was 38 years old. The Wicked Witch of Monroe, the grave of Hannah Cranna, Trumbull, Connecticut. Hannah Cranna was born in 1783. As she aged, she became meaner and meaner. She was so mean she was known as the Wicked Witch of Monroe and taunted her neighbors relentlessly. She was known to threaten and curse them to attain things she wanted. One fateful day, Hannah and her husband Joseph went for a walk when Joseph fell from a cliff and died. Although ruled an accident, some believe that Hannah pushed her husband off the cliff, and there are others that believe she made her husband so miserable that he jumped. In 1859, at the age of 83, Hannah Cranna walked into town to tell the locals that she wanted her casket carried on foot all the way to the cemetery because she was going to be dying soon. The locals thought she had gone mad, but Hannah Cranna died shortly after. The locals, denying Hannah's last wishes, put her casket in the wagon as opposed to carrying it as she had wanted. Mysteriously, the casket rolled off the wagon again and again, forcing the pallbearers to carry her all the way to the cemetery. When the people returned to town, they had found that Hannah's home had burned to the ground. Every year, a car crashes into her tombstone to avoid hitting a mysterious, old, vanishing woman. Downs Road, Hamden, Connecticut. I've learned through research that every state hosts a haunted road. Downs Road in Hamden, Connecticut is one of the scariest in the country. Paranormal phenomena occurs regularly, especially near the unpaved portion of the road. The 1-mile stretch of eerie woodland is said to be the home of a small, 4-foot-tall Yeti-like creature. Known as the Downs Road Monster, the creature has been known to terrorize hikers and chase after cars, leaving behind dents and scratches from its claws. The apparitions of small children running through the trees have been reported, and eerie screams are heard nightly. Residents living near Downs Road often get a creepy sensation even in daylight when walking near the road, and refuse to traverse it at night. Teenagers looking for a thrill have been stalked by a white, faceless apparition similar to Slender Man. The land was once home to Native Americans, and some suggest that a curse was put on the land to thwart the invading colonists. Some have seen black shadow figures in the trees. Some believe these to be the spirits of the natives. To the residents of Hamden, Downs Road is known as Melonhead Road. Thought to be the conjoining of human and alien, the product of inbreeding and isolation, or an escape science experiment gone wrong, the Melonheads have been known to reside on Downs Road and have been terrifying people since the beginning of Hamden's colonization. The story of the Melonheads in Connecticut traced back to a banished family, descendants of the colonial era, and their link to witchcraft. The family was found guilty of witchcraft and banished from the colony. They lived deep in the woods in the outskirts of civilization, breeding and growing into its own colony, in the area now known as Downs Road. It is said, if seen, the Melonheads will try to capture and eat you. The area is also known for its unusually large number of UFO sightings. In fact, Connecticut has one of the largest numbers of documented UFO sightings in the country.